All right. So for those who've been on for the last week or last few weeks, we are dealing with this awakening, and we're dealing with the process that the Most High has taken us through as He is, has been waking us up and bringing us into more truth. And so as we're going through this process, we want to on Tuesday nights, we're kind of setting the atmosphere, setting a space for us to be able to kind of dig deeper into what we're going through in this walk. So the last few weeks we've been talking about coming out. We've been talking about actually the process of waking up, coming out of the darkness, waking up out of our sleep, and kind of what that looks like. So we're going to move tonight. I'm going to put this on the screen for a second. So I talked about on the first week how on Tuesday nights we're going to be kind of going through a process of the steps of waking up. If you look at it in a natural sense, you wake up, you go get cleaned up, washed up or whatever. Then you get dressed, and then you get whatever you need for the mission that you have for that day, whatever your agenda is for that day. And then you go out and you do it. So we're going to kind of, talk about some different things throughout that process. They're going to kind of overlap sometimes. But we're going to kind of be going through this process. So we've been talking about the waking up portion of this, just what does it mean to wake up? We'll keep talking about that. But tonight we're going to kind of transition over to the next part of dealing with the cleanup process. All right, we woke up, stretched out, we got our eyes adjusted. So now it's time to get up. And before we can get dressed for our day, we have to get cleaned up. So the Most High is desiring to prepare us to be a royal priesthood. He has to put on those garments. He has to put on those things on us. But before he can do that, we have to go through this cleansing process. So we're going to kind of start to deal with that. This will be part one of washing away the residue. So we're going to kind of talk about what some of that residue is that we're bringing with us, that, and how we go through the process of allowing the Most High to wash us and to cleanse us from the things that we are bringing with us from our past experiences. So I'm going to open up in prayer. Abba Yah, we thank you for this time, Father. We thank you, first of all, for who you are and for just continually being faithful to us, Father, for bringing us through this day, to this portion of the week that we're in, that we've made it to so far, Father. We don't take it lightly. We thank you for your protection over us. We thank you for your provision for us, Father, as we've gone through the things that we have to do in our day-to-day lives, Father. We thank you for this time and this space, Father. I thank you for each person on this call, Father, that you were with them throughout their day, Father, and that you saw for them to be here tonight, Father. So I thank you that you will protect this space, Father. This space will be a protected place, Father, where your presence will dwell with us. Your spirit will lead us and guide us, Father, that you will open up your word to us so that we can know you more, so that you can shine your light of your love, of the light of your word on our hearts, Father, on our minds, so that we can see clearer the things that you would have us to see, Father. So open up your word to us tonight. Soften our hearts. Give clarity to our eyes so that we can see what you desire for us to see, Father. Protect this space, Father, that we would yield to your ruach within this call, yield to your spirit, and that you will be uplifted. In the name of your Son, we pray. Amen. Hallelujah. All right. All right. So last week we talked a little bit about, we started talking about how when we are going through our walk, right, we have let me put this up here. We talked about those three parts, and we'll continue kind of going back to this, the three different realms of this awakening process. And we talked about how Most High awakens us to who he is, his way, his Torah, his kingdom. He opens our eyes up to who he is. And as he's illuminating himself, his word to us, he's shining his light. He starts to reveal to us the enemy, the adversary, the spirit of the adversary, and how it works in the earth, how the different structures that are set up in the earth are operating. And he begins to show us how that has affected us personally, and how to come out of those things, and to what degree that we've become entangled in that. So then also he begins to shine his light on us in our own hearts, our own person, and begins to reveal to us what's going on inside of us, So we talked about how we don't want to become so preoccupied with any one area that we don't take into consideration the whole thing. So, and the more we walk in the spirit, the more this will just become one whole. It'll just be walking with Yah, looking at Yah, and we'll see when he's revealing something of our own heart, and we'll see when he's revealing something in the world and how to navigate through that. So we started talking about that, and as we were talking about the you portion of it, the part that looks at our hearts and the part that looks at us, we were talking about the lens. So we started talking about how we have our own lens of how we're looking at things. We have our own glasses on in ways that we see things. So as the Most High is teaching us his word and bringing us into his word, he starts to bring more clarity to the way that we're seeing things. So he has to cleanse off the lenses that have been tainted. So it may be just from our own personal upbringing. It may be from coming out of religion. Whatever it is, we have a perspective and a lens that we're coming from that the Most High has to kind of cleanse off to be able to, so that we can see things his way. So I want to go to Matthew 23. Go to Matthew 23. Matthew 23. So in this whole chapter, really, this is Messiah talking. So he's dealing with the scribes and the Pharisees. So he's dealing with the religious leaders, and this is what they call the woes. And he's saying woe to them because of how they are operating. And I want to really focus on verse 25, and I'm gonna start at verse 1, and then I'm gonna jump down. It says, then Yahusha spoke to the crowds and to his taught ones, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit on the seat of Moses. Therefore, whatever they say to you to guard and do. But do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. So he's telling them that, they're reading the Torah, they're reading from what Moses said. So do what they say to do, but don't do it the way that they're doing it, because their hearts are not right. They're not doing it in a way that reflects the Most High. So he says, do what they say, but don't do as they do. For they bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on men's shoulders, but with their finger they do not wish to move them. They do all their works to be seen by men, and make their tefillin wide, and lengthen the tzitzits of their garments. They love the best places at feasts, and the best seats in the congregations, and the greetings in the marketplaces to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. So he's saying that, they're doing all these outward things. So it's saying that they got their tzitzits, they got their tassels on, they have their, shalom sis, they have their, they like their best seats when they're coming for the feast days. They have a, certain place they like to sit so that they can be seen in prominence. They like to be called by certain names. They like to be called rabbi. They like to be acknowledged. So it's all these outward things. So he's saying that he's giving us an example of what not to focus on. He says, but you do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Messiah, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your father, he who is in the heavens. Neither be called leaders, for one is your leader, the Messiah. But the greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted. So he goes on to talk. So he's bringing them down. So he's bringing them the right perspective. So we talked about last week how Yahusha was the master teacher. So he was putting things while he was walking in Torah, and there were different groups of people who were trying to walk in Torah, but they had these lenses on that were tainted and that were causing the people to be led astray. So Messiah is coming with the clarity, with seeing clearly, having the right way to see things. He's giving them he's rebuking them, first of all, because they're leaders. And so being blind leaders, they're causing the people to be blind and leading them astray. So he goes on to talk about different ways where he says, woe to you, scribes, and he goes on here. So he says, I'm gonna skip down to verse 25. And it says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, Because you clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are filled with plunder and unrighteousness. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, so that the outside of them becomes clean too. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly indeed look well, but inside are filled with dead men's bones and all uncleanness. So you too outwardly indeed appear righteous to men, but inside you are filled with hypocrisy and lawlessness. So he's telling them, woe to you, because on the outside you look like everything's good. On the outside you're doing what appears to be the right things. You're cleaning the outside of the cup. But he said, woe to you if you would tend to the inside of the cup, what's on the inside, the inward matters, then the outside of the cup will become clean also. So when we focus on what's going on in our hearts, what's going on in our minds, what's going on within our inner person, then as that gets dealt with, then the outside falls right into place. But a lot of times it's a lot easier. For us to focus on the outward things. So when you think about it, all these things that they were focusing on, even when you think back to our ancestors, a lot of times we focused on doing, we did the sacrifices, we did all of the outside actions that we were supposed to be doing. But for some reason, our hearts were far from him. So this seems to be, it's a pattern that we've seen all throughout history with our people. And it's a pattern that we've seen in our own lives where we can do all these outward things, but our hearts still be far from the Most High. If you've been, if you grew up going to church, you know for sure that, if you've been in a part of church, I've been to churches where it's like, everybody's doing things like we're all paying tithes, everybody, you're in the choir, you're an usher, you're doing all kinds of things. But you're doing all kinds of things, but that everybody's not living right. The behind the scenes, all kinds of things are going on. So we have this tendency to do things on the outside, and to make outside actions, but to not keep a distance so the Most High is not dealing with our heart. Octo, would I see your hand?
Okay, shalom everybody. I just want to kind of say that we have to be careful, like when it comes to the Messiah saying that people, clean the outside of the cup and not the inside. It's not that they were doing. It's not that they were doing what the Most High was saying that they were doing. And even if you look at our ancestors, the Most High said that He didn't really care about our feast days and so on and so forth, because we weren't really doing the Torah, which the Most High said that if a man does, he shall live by them. So we were doing the commandments of men, and that's why He couldn't stand our feast days, and not necessarily doing the commands, but just doing it with like half a heart. It's just we weren't doing it at all toward our brother, which made it detestable in the sight of the Creator.
Okay. Soda. Okay, and then so I'm gonna go back up to 23, verse 23. Just to kind of go into what you were saying just now. This is one of my like favorite scriptures right here. In 23, it says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you tithe the mint and the anise and the cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the Torah, the right ruling, the compassion, and the belief. These need to have been done without neglecting the others. So what is he saying here? So while as Aki was saying that there's times when our ancestors were not actually doing the things they were supposed to be doing, but they were and they weren't. You know what I mean? So as far as the Most High is concerned, as he's saying here, so he's saying that you should do one without neglecting the other. So while they were doing the thing, so they tithed of the mint and the anise. So that's something, they tithed of the mint and the anise and the cumin or whatever. They tithed of that. They gave the 10% of that, right? But he said, but you neglected the weightier matters. The weightier matters being those inward things. So you're doing this outward thing, but you neglected the inward thing, the right ruling, the compassion, the faith. And this is the part that is so significant to me. He says, you need to have done one without neglecting the other. You need to have done one without neglecting the other. So it's not to say that the outward things are not significant, It's not to say that you're not supposed to, if you were a priest in a temple, that you weren't supposed to do the sacrifices and do the different things, that you weren't supposed to keep the feast days, that you're not supposed to keep the Shabbat and the dietary laws and all those things. You're supposed to do that. But if you're busy doing that, but you're not keeping the Torah, as Aki was saying, keeping the Torah of right ruling, of compassion, of faith, if you're neglecting the duty of the heart, the way that we see, the way that we respond to the Most High. So if you're doing all the things he says to do, but you're at the same time committing idolatry, then you're not keeping the Torah. So, and this is the dichotomy. This is the divide that we don't see sometimes, because we see the outward things. If you don't know me and you see me just going through the motions of doing certain things, you may think that I'm a righteous person. Oh, she's righteous. I see her do this, I see her do that. You may think that I'm righteous because I appear to be doing things on the outside. But until you encounter me personally and you get to see when I'm challenged with these inner things, is she going to make the right decision? Is she going to have compassion towards this person? Is she going to maintain her trust in the Most High in the situation? That's when you get to see the weightier matters. So that's where we tip the scale, because we neglect those things, but then we are focused on those outward things. So in this situation, they were, as Messiah just said, they sat on the seat of Moses. So do what they say. So they're telling you Torah. They're telling you the word. They're telling you, and they're doing some of the things that they're supposed to do. So, I would say our people did some of the things that the Torah said to do, but they were doing it in vain. They were doing it, taking the name of the Most High in vain. So when we look at the commandment that tells us not to take the name of the Most High in vain, in today's debates or arguments, people will go back and forth about, well, what's his name and how do you say his name, and we don't want to take the name in vain, when the Most High is really speaking of, like, we don't want to take on his name and make his name defiled. And that's what our people did amongst the nations. We took on his name, we walked as if we were his people, but then we defiled his name because we didn't reflect his character. We didn't do what we were supposed to do in loving each other and loving the Most High. So I love that verse in 23, because it talks about doing one without neglecting the other. Because a lot of times I think we get one or the other. And I'm gonna come back to that. I want to go to. Well, I have this picture up here of this cup, and looks like it was a coffee cup or something like that, and it has residue on the inside of it. So we're talking about right now washing away the residue. So how do we clean the inside of the cup? How do we deal with those things that are inside of the cup, so that we're not going through the motions of this walk? So the inside of the cup, when you start to get residue on the inside, so this cup here looks like it's been sitting for a while. It looks like it's been just kind of sitting there. It's been neglected. If you ever left a cup sitting somewhere after having something in it, especially something like coffee, it'll be harder to get off. So if you take something to the sink, as soon as you finish and rinse it off, it's easy to rinse off. But if you let it sit there for a while, it starts to get crusty, it starts to get hard, it starts to get stuck. You might have to scrub it a little bit to get it off. So we find ourselves in this situation because we've gone through our life, however long we've gone before we've gotten to now, or before we've gotten to the point where the Most High met us. We are developing this residue on the inside that's just been sitting there and kind of festering. So now we come to the point where we're trying to get that residue off the inside of the cup, and it's a rough thing sometimes to get off. You can put it under water and it's not going to just rinse off. So how do we allow ourselves to allow the Most High to get this residue that we have? Do we even know what the residue is? So, and that's the question. We come into something, and the question is, now the Most High has to cleanse that lens off so that we can even see what the residue is. What is it that I'm bringing with me that I have to now let go of? So I want to look at a couple of things. Go to this first. Hopefully this box isn't blocking. You all can see. If anybody's taking psychology or any type of psychology classes, excuse me, you've heard of nature or nurture before. So when they're dealing with psychology, they're trying to figure out like why people do different things that they do. How do people end up going down certain routes or dealing with certain things? So they have this concept called nature versus nurture. So they'll say, okay, nature, it talks about, it says our genetics determine our behavior, our personality traits and ability, our personality traits and abilities are in our nature. So this side of the coin is saying, okay, this person is this way because something inside their genetics, something, they were born into this basically. So they were born with this genetic trait that causes their personality to do this. It causes their behavior to do this. And so this is the nature part of it. So what is any part of that true? If anybody wants to jump in and answer, is any part of that true?
I think to a certain extent, yes.
All right.
I have 4 children, and even before they got older, so things they would do, you would see things that they do just like you, or you would see your father in them, or your mother, or your grandparents in them. Some of the things that they do are just within your people, I think. So I think some things, most things I would say, though, are more from nurture and environment, but I do think our genetics do come through in our children and within them.
All right. Definitely. And I agree with that. I think that nature definitely plays a part in it. There's certain things that we inherit. The Most High talks about things being passed down from generation to generation. So there's certain things, like you said, just on a basic level, we know that there's certain things certain traits that we get from our parents. Even if we didn't know our parents, you can not even know your parents, but you have those genes, so certain traits and certain behaviors that you may pick up from them, not even knowing it. So part of the things that we come into is nature. It's things that we are born into. It's things that we have inherited over the years. So that's a part of some of the things that we experience. So that's why when we come into this walk, a lot of times you hear people talk about generational curses. And like we said, it's two sides. So let me talk about the nurture side of it. So you have the nature side of it, then you have the nurture side of it. It says our environment. I can't read it. Our environment, upbringing, and life experiences determine our behavior. We are nurtured to behave in certain ways. So it says our environment, upbringing, and life experiences determine our behavior. We are nurtured to behave in certain ways. So the combination, so between things that we've inherited because from our genetics from our parents, or from the spiritual generational curses or things that have gone down through our bloodlines or whatever, or through those things, and then through being nurtured by whoever nurtured us, whether it's our parents, our neighborhood, our religious atmosphere, and just society in general. We've all been nurtured. That's why when we get to Romans chapter 12, we all know it talks about presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice, set apart, well-pleasing to Yah, our reasonable worship. And says, do not be conformed to this world. Do not be conformed. Don't be molded by it. Don't be nurtured by it. In other words, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you prove what is the good and well-pleasing and perfect desire of Yah. So he's saying, do not be conformed to this world. So we already know that we have been conformed to this world. When you have grown up in this world, coming to the Most High later on, you've already been conformed by this world. So we have to undo whatever we've been conformed by. It says be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So our inner man has to be transformed and renewed. We have to get a new lens so that we can see what is the well-pleasing and perfect desire of Yah. So we're in this process now. And the tricky part of it is being able to see what part of it. So we have this thing that has conformed us, that we have these things that are just in our nature. And you can look at going all the way back to the garden. So you had Adam and you have Hawa. So they didn't have earthly parents, of course. They formed right from the ground. The Most High blew the breath of life into them. So they don't have no generational things or anything like that. So we assume that they were doing the will of the Most High up until the point where Hawa or Eve was deceived and started partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So in that split moment, when the serpent was presenting her with the option. So when he started questioning and saying, well, did the Most High say this? Did the Most High say that? He started presenting a different way of thinking to her. So he started to conform the way that she saw things through that experience. So through that experience in the garden, she started to think things that she didn't think before. So that started to form her, started to nurture her. So it shows you that the relationship between the nature and nurture, even though she was no genetical background or anything like that, just in that split second, something in her nature connected to that way that the serpent was trying to nurture her, and it shifted her. So let's look at if anybody's ever seen this before, this is called a cultural iceberg. So this is dealing with culture. Let me move this thing over here. So it shows culture, and I like this image here, the way that it kind of breaks it down. But it's dealing with culture. So we're always talking about culture, right? We're always talking about culture, and it breaks this thing down to look at the surface culture and then to look at the deeper culture. So on the top of the surface, when you think about culture, you're like, what? You're dealing with, music, holidays, dances, festivals, food, games, fashion, the language, literature. All these are like the outward things of a culture. It's the way that you can look at to determine this. This is Asian culture versus this is some country in African's culture. This is whatever kind of culture. You can look on the surface of things based on the type of food it is. Okay, this is Mexican food. This is whatever. You can hear the music and it will identify the group of people that it belongs to. You can look at fashion. All these are outward things. This is things that are on the outside of the cup. And sometimes as we come into this walk, we even start to just focus on these surface things. So these surface things, we might change our food. Okay, let's start keeping the dietary laws. Okay, we might change our fashion. Okay, let me change the way that I dress. Let me, dress a certain way. Okay, the language. We're going to start learning the Hebrew language. We're going to start getting into this, the language. We're going to literature. We're going to start reading our books that have been neglected. We start keeping our feasts and our festivals and our holidays, and we might change our music and all these type of things that are surface level cultural things. All of it is good. All of it is a part of our expressions. But let's look at the deeper culture. Let's look below the surface, the things that you don't outright see. And so when you think about what we just read with the scribes and the Pharisees, on the outside they were doing these certain things, and throughout history, on the outside our people were doing these certain things. But when you look into the deeper culture, this is the inside of the cup that Messiah was trying to reveal, that the Most High, that the prophets were trying to get our people to see. So it talks about, and this is kind of light here, so sorry if you can't see it, communication styles and rules, body language, eye contact, how we display emotions, your notion of courtesy, what beauty looks like, what friendship, your concept of time, your concept of what fairness and justice is, your concept of self, how you see family life, how you approach your religion, your decision making, your problem solving, how you approach courtship, attitudes towards senior citizens, attitudes towards age, towards death, towards work, towards cooperation versus competition, the different ways that you perceive things. There's a couple of these. There's another one that goes into values. What do you value as a people, as a society? The way that you approach things. So the outside is just an outward expression, this surface culture, but this deeper culture, these things that are under the surface, goes into your motivation for things, the why, you know, the why behind it, the deeper thought processes that go behind it. So these are the things that we have to start to dig into. And this is a light list. Let me see if this other one goes any deeper. Let's see. Attitudes. Well, it's pretty much the same list on this one. Let's see if it says anything different. Dealing with problem solving, decision making. So it's more so of the why, the what leads to this. So it's like if you don't address these underlying ideas, these underlying concepts of why you do a certain thing or why you approach things a certain way, and kind of the structure beneath it, you know, then you're not really changing anything until you get to that point. So when you get to the below the surface of these things, this is when we start to unravel what's going on. So we have to be careful to not put so much focus and emphasis on the outside things, on the surface level things of our culture, that we neglect these things below the surface. So when the Most High gave us his Torah, he gave us his word, he gave us the Ruach, he gave us, when he gave Israel the Torah, he said, this is your wisdom. And through this wisdom, you're going to be a light to the nations. So all the nations have a way that they operate, right? They have a way that they go about things. They have a way that they go about all these things that are above the surface on this iceberg, and they have a way that they got there, and how they think and operate, which are these things below the surface on this iceberg. So he says that I'm going to give you a way that is going to be counter to the ways that you're going to see around you. So before he brought them into the land, before he brought them into Canaan, he said, don't do the things that these people don't do things the way that these people that are in this nation does it, you know. So, and he gave the Torah and gave his instructions, which were counter to what was going on around him. So in this point in time, Israel was in a protected space. So when he moved them into the land, you know, they were exposed to the things around them. At times they allowed people in their midst, or left people in the midst that started to kind of influence them with the other cultures. But Israel as a nation was in a protected space. So now, as part of the punishment for not keeping Torah, that's when the Most High said, I'm going to scatter you amongst the nations, and you're going to be basically under a culture that is contrary to me. You're going to be under a way of governing. So they're going to have a government that does not operate the way that the Torah operates. They're not going to operate the way that the kingdom of Yah operates. They're going to have a way of viewing children that's not going to be the way that the Most High views children. They're going to have a way of they're going to have expressions of sexuality that don't reflect what the Most High has given us to walk in as far as sexuality. So they're going to have this concept of doing things. And as you're in the midst of this, you're going to start to be conformed to and molded to and nurtured to these things going on into the environment. So as we come to the Most High, we find ourselves in the midst of this. Now we come to a place where it's like, well, man, I've been molded by all of these things. So now that I'm coming into another space where you're trying to return me back to your ways, now it's like, Most High, you have to reveal to me, what is the residue that I still have in my cup? What things am I stuck on? If we've come out of a religious background, we have a whole way of seeing. Like when I first came into this truth, I knew the scriptures back and forth like the back of my hand. You know, I knew everything in here. I took theologies classes and all that kind of stuff, so I could prove and disprove anything that you gave to me based on the lens that I was looking through, that I had been, you know, had grown accustomed to in religion. So I could, based on that, I could tell you whatever it said. But when the Most High started to shatter that thing to say the way that you're looking at it is through some glasses that have been given to you and placed on you, you know, so now you got to let me wash that off and cause you to see in a clearer way, you know. So, but prior to that, I had no idea that this was even, I'm thinking that I'm doing good. I'm not seeing this as residue whatsoever. You know, I'm not seeing, you know, that the way I'm seeing things has been tainted. It has been a way that I've been conformed to. So one of the things we went to last week, it says, what verse was that? We talked about asking the Most High to cleanse our heart, to show us, you know, show us who we are, show us our what's going on in the inner parts. The Most High says he desires truth in the inward parts, but we have to ask y'all to search our hearts and show it to us. He already knows, but we have to ask him to search our hearts and reveal to us what it is that is the residue in our lives. So sometimes we know what that residue is. Like sometimes we're aware of it, right? We already know, okay, I know this is something I got to work on, you know, maybe something like the way that we eat. We may know that we are gluttonous. We may know that, you know, this is a problem. The Most High would not have me to be gluttonous in my eating. This is not, you know, why the world may celebrate overeating and those things, you know, but this is something that I know and I'm clear that the Most High will not have me to overindulge. He will have me to exercise the fruit of the spirit of self-control, you know. So that's something that we may know, you know, may be clear. This is something I have to work on. That's residue that we're clear on. But then there's residue that we don't see at all. And I think that can be the difficult part. And that's the part where the Most High has to humble us and cause us to humble ourselves and to be able to see. A lot of times this happens as we're reading the word. It happens as we are in the midst of each other. That's why he says not to, you know, that's why it's important for us to not forsake dealing with each other and being in the midst of some type of assembly of people where we can be able to see what's going on. You may not see that smudge, you know, that thing in your heart that is stuck at the bottom, you know what I mean, until something happens and something rubs it, you know what I mean, you scrub something and it starts to float to the surface, you know. So that's why it's important for us to be in environments where we're able to allow that residue to be ruffled so that it can come up to the surface. All right. Read that. So a couple of examples of residue. Our thought process, the way that we think. Sometimes we can focus on the things that we think, but sometimes the way that we think about things, the way that we approach things is what gives us the problem. The way that we approach things is what causes us to always end up in an argument or causes us to be fearful. You know, it's the way that we think. So the Most High has to change the way that we think, our thought process, our belief systems. Some of the residue that we bring is wounds. The Most High is trying to cleanse us up, right? So if you're washing off in the shower or whatever, if you have a area that's wounded, you have to kind of be careful with that area. If you have a fresh cut, you know, you can scrub the rest of you, you know, in a way and not be bothered. But when that wound comes up, it's going to be sensitive. So you got to kind of work your way around that. So sometimes we have that area that's sensitive and it's kind of like, don't touch it. But we have to put ourselves in a position where the Most High is sensitive to that. But it's like, okay, you have to go through the process of allowing him to deal with that wounded area, because that also has to be cleansed. It also can't become infected. You know what I mean? So, but we have those areas of those wounds that we bring that we have to be mindful that the Most High has to be able to touch that area too. So residue, we may have been betrayed. We may have things we just don't have understanding, different behavior patterns. We have different practices. We talked a little bit last week or the week before about anger, bringing anger with us from past experiences. And if we don't cleanse that up, we'll be looking through the lens of anger and it'll taint the good things. We talked last week about, we read in Titus how to the pure all things are pure, but to those who are defiled all things become defiled. So as we're going through this process, the scripture tells us a couple times to get rid of what's evil, but to cling to and hold on to what's good. So as we're going through this process, we want to cling to what's good, hold on to what's good. We don't want to lose the things that the Most High has worked in us up to this point that is good. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And we can sometimes approach things in different ways. Some of us have, we have our own different ways that we handle stuff. So some of us like to just throw out, I'm throwing out everything. So some of us take the approach, okay, everything I learned in the past is questionable. I'm throwing out everything. Then I'm going to put everything back in one by one, and that's how we go about it. Some of us, take the approach of, okay, I'm going to start just adding in the new things, but I'm keeping everything that I was already thinking, doing, all my ways. I'm going to keep it right here. I'm not getting rid of anything. Then the Most High has to kind of grab each one of those things out of our hand, one by one. It's like, okay, give me that. Then we find ourselves in a tug of war. It's like, but I thought that was okay, Father. I thought that was good, and we find ourselves in a tug of war, so these are just some of the struggles, some of the things that we go through as we're trying to go through this process of cleansing the inside of our cup. I want to read, let's see. I want to read. So we're becoming a royal priesthood. A royal priesthood. It's under a new order. It's under the order of Melchizedek, right? But when he was preparing the priesthood, he told them, let's read it quickly in Ezekiel 44:23. He says, "You are to teach my people," speaking to the Levites, to the priests, "you are to teach my people the difference between the set apart and the profane, and make them know what is unclean and clean." So the Levites, the priesthood, is supposed to teach the people the difference between the set apart and the profane, and make them know what is unclean and what is clean. So that's the job of those who are of the priesthood. So as we are coming into our role and our place, this is our job, to be able to show people the difference between what is clean and what is unclean, to help people discern between that. But first, we have to come to a place where we can see clearly what is clean and what is unclean, what is pure, what is impure, what is, and not calling evil good and good evil. We have to come through that process. So the Most High is cleaning us up right now so that we can see clearly and discern clearly, what is the perfect and well-pleasing, what is the perfect will and what's well-pleasing to the Most High, as we read in Romans. So he has to teach us that. He has to show us that. And in doing that, we have to be able to let go of the things that serve us, and to hold fast to the thing. Let go of the things that don't serve us and hold fast to the things that do serve us. And as we go through that process, it can be sensitive. One of my brothers, Antonio's on the call. You posted a video earlier today talking about, Brother Antonio posted a video today talking about, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but if you want to jump on, but he was talking about honoring our elders, honoring those who have gone before us, and those who have taught us along the way, whether that be our parents, whether that be, other elders and leaders. So as we coming into something where we're realizing that a lot of things that we have learned may not have been true, sometimes we got this tendency to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We're going to throw out the whole thing and just kick it to the curb. And then we like banging, upset with those who have taught us those things. While some may have been in malice, but some may have been, in innocence, or in ignorance, not knowing, so it becomes a sensitive thing for us to say, okay, how do I navigate through this process, and not dishonoring those who have, nurtured me along the way, but then also not dishonoring the Most High. So it puts us sometimes in this sensitive place where it's like, okay, how do I navigate through this? How do I not dishonor the path that the Most High is taking me through, he's taking me through all these avenues, you know, to get me to somewhere. You know, that wasn't the place he wanted me to stop in. He wanted me to keep going, but he used this place to be able to get me to where I'm going. You know, so as we're navigating through that, you know, and if Brother Antonio, if you want to jump in there, feel free to. I'm not gonna put you on the spot. But I thought that was really good. And when you were talking about that, it connected to this. It made me think about this whole thing of how we've inherited these different things. And now that we're trying to cleanse ourselves from it, it's a sensitive process, you know, that we're going through.
Shalom, shalom. Yeah, it was just dealing with me about, you know, honoring your father and your mother, about how that's the first commandment with a promise, and how it'll be well with you. And a lot of us, when we think about wealth, and we think about a person's assets, and we think about, you know, silver and gold and estates and all of that, but the Most High was dealing with me about the wealth of honoring our fathers and our mothers and our elders and all of these different things that he has given us. Because a lot of times, as us being the seeds, the children following, we neglect, especially when we come into some kind of truth or some kind of understanding, we tend to throw the baby out with the dirty water, so to say. And when it comes to those that, you know, tried it before us, we tend to push that aside because we don't want, you know, we know this now. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to, you talking another talk. I'm trying to get away from that. You know, that was then, you know, but this is what Yah is showing me now. And so Yah was just like dealing with me about the fact, never, you know, disrespect what he has used them before, because it's like you have to learn how to deposit it, you know, along with withdrawals. If anybody know what they're talking about, when you go to a bank, you know, you do withdrawals, but you also got to make deposits, and you have to respect both for that, you know. So you have to go back and talk to your elders, respect your elders, and honor your elders to get what they understand, so you could be able to understand what you need to know now, not just to disregard everything that has came prior to what your understanding is now, but you must balance yourself in dealing with honoring your elders and ones that come before you, so your days can be long, so your days can be well with you, not just to say, you know what, Yah is dealing with me right now, and so because I'm walking this walk and I know my identity now, and I'm an Israelite and I'm this and I'm that. Okay, but you're still in that Christian faith. You're still in that. I don't want to deal with that. We got to understand that Yah deals with us in different walks, different paths. And it was things that he has revealed to them that got them through the stage that they was in, that you need to know to get you through the walk that you're walking in. So it's like a piece to the puzzle. You know, everybody has their part, but you can't not disregard any part, because if you put it together, it's a whole. So that's.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. It's so important to have a relationship with the Spirit of the Most High, as we're trying to navigate through changes. Going back to the verse when Yahusha was telling them, you know, you should have done one without neglecting the other, and being able to have that balance of everything not being black and white, in a sense, everything not being, and I'm not saying that good isn't good and what's evil isn't evil, what's clean isn't clean, or what's unclean isn't unclean, but the way that you navigate through those things requires the Most High and his wisdom and his spirit to lead you, you know, because let me read this in Isaiah chapter 11, when he talked about Messiah in chapter 11, verse 1 says, a rod shall come forth from the stump of Jesse, and a sprout from his roots shall be fruitful. The spirit of Yahuah, this is talking about Messiah, the spirit of Yah shall rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and of the fear of Yahuah, and shall make him breathe in the fear of Yahuah. And he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and shall decide with straightness for the meek ones of the earth, and shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and slay the wrong with the breath of his lips. And righteousness shall be the girdle of his loins, and trustworthiness the girdle of his waist. So it says that he's not going to judge by the sight of his eyes, or the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness he's going to judge. So it started off by saying that the spirit of Yah is going to rest on him. The spirit of wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, the spirit of knowledge, and the spirit of the fear of Yah. So these are the spirit. This is what we have to take on us, if we are going to navigate in the way that he navigated. So he was able to judge righteously and to make righteous decisions, not just by what he saw with his eyes or by what he heard with his ears. So that's the place that we're trying to get to, where we can see how to judge righteously. So that's why he's trying to get this residue off of us. He's trying to get the residue off of us so that we can judge righteously in our day-to-day dealings and how we're dealing with each other. How do I deal with this sister, with this brother, with where they are, and with where I am? How do I navigate this conversation? How do I deal with this relationships with my family, based on where they are and where I am? How do I navigate through that in a righteous way? Not just the way that I think, but how do I do that righteously? Well, he has to get the residue off of us in order to do that. We can't do it through a lens of pride and ego, right? We can't do it through, if we got anger, if we have our own idea of what's right, what's fair, and what's not fair. You know what I mean? So all these ideas, all these things ways that we think, if we still wounded by something that happened to us when we were a child, and we get to that situation again, we see something that looks like that, we can't act righteously because we still got that residue. So as the Most High has to clean us up, because we need to judge as a priesthood. We have to judge righteously. We're constantly being in situations where we have to make these righteous judgments, and we have to be able to walk in the way that Yahusha walked as he was navigating through this, and as he continues to make righteous judgments. So we're going through this process and we're trying to navigate through it. So one of the biggest things is not really being aware of some of the things where we have residue. So anybody have an example of how can you think of an example of how, since you've come into this phase of your walk with the Most High, how has your thinking changed? Like, if you have an example of how your thinking has changed, how you were thinking one way, you thought that was the way to see it, but now as you've come into more truth and more understanding, that your thinking or your way of operating has changed. If anybody has an example of that, feel free to jump in. Sister Yiskia?
I forgive me, y'all. I can't start my video for whatever reason, so if you don't mind, I'll just speak.
That's fine.
But I think one of the things that I've learned that has really helped me a lot in this walk is I was brought to a place in the Messiah where I was starting to understand that when the Lord brought the Messiah into this life, the word of his word made flesh to dwell amongst us. He came to help us to understand the laws of love, right? Because the word is the law. We know that God is love. So when we're talking about the word of God, we're talking about the laws of love. And I didn't really know how to love or be loved because I was dealt with very harshly as a child. And gentleness, kindness was not something that was in my presence oftentimes. So I came to a place where, you know, I was around others who were very rambunctious. You know, they were very, you know, loud and boisterous and proud and, you know, almost like aggressive, you know, and that's how I was, very like that, you know. You know, we about it, you know, we a Hebrew Israelite, you know what I'm saying? But then the Lord brought me to a place to help me to understand that's pride and a haughty look. And you know, when you read Proverbs, those are some of the things that the Lord hates. You know, he hates a proud look. He hates one that lifts themselves up in their own eyes. You know, he hates one that speaks well of themselves and doesn't let others speak well of them. Because like you were saying earlier, where we fail to see the residue in our cup, you know, the Most High is able to pinpoint that residue. But we can't see it, so we think we look good, you know. We're looking at ourselves, we're looking at our outer selves, but the Lord doesn't look at the outer appearance of man. He looks at the heart of the man. And he is so worthy, so faithful that he will take us aside, you know, and he'll speak to us oftentimes pertaining to these matters. And the things that we can change right away, we change. But the things that we can't change, we are humbled by that fault, which brings us to a place of humility. You understand? And it puts us in a position where we understand, okay, I must not deal with my brethren in this way anymore because I don't want to make no one feel like I just felt.
That's good.
Shalom. Can I kind of hit on something right there? It's like the thorn in the flesh. It's like the reminder to humble yourself. You know, it's certain things that Yah leaves in our life that we have to, you know, depend on him, because a lot of us, like the sister was saying, we have that pride going on, you know, and that arrogance, and we so, like she said, boisterous, and I'm a Hebrew Israelite, and I know this, and I have this knowledge, and all of it has its place, but that thorn in the flesh is left there so you can depend on the Most High to bring you to a point to consider your brother, to consider your sister, and not to override them and be over righteous and overzealous over them, but put them in the place that I need you, you need me. You know, it's bringing us to the fact of understanding that we are one. One thing that I understood back in the church is that religious spirit calls you to think about self and self only. And it exalts yourself as it's all about me, you know, and bless me, take care of me, banish me. But it was more about self, but less about somebody else. When they're going through, you don't have the heart to consider them. You don't have the compassion to consider them. So one thing that I have understood when I came over here and Yahuah started to let me see things is that you got to examine yourself. And as you examine yourself, you could be able to consider your brother, because at the end of the day, how we reflect Yahuah is how we consider our brothers and our sisters.
Okay. To the aunt and the coachee. So kind of what you were saying in terms of how mentalities have changed. When I first kind of the Most High revealed who we were as a nation, I didn't really have the whole, we Israel and everybody else is going to die as far as other nations mentality. But what I did have was whether you were black, white, Asian, Mexican, whatever you were, if you weren't doing thus saith the Most High, then I was going to cut you. And it was going to be with the scriptures, and it wasn't going to be degrading you in any type of personal matter, but it was just going to try to demolish your way of thinking. Now, 6 years in, the Most High still has me zealous in the sense of there is no Elohim but Yahuah. There is a people who he has chosen as a nation, but that nation is not saved by DNA. It is saved by obedience and faith in his word. And now it's more of if we have opposing views, I'm not going to try to cut to destroy you. I'm not going to try to pull something out of your hand. I'm going to use the word and pray that the Most High gives you understanding so that you put down your idol yourself without me having to snatch it. So the Most High has kind of been working with me on that. At times that Pincus type zeal comes up, where you just want to ram something through somebody. But that too has its place, So we just got to wait on that time when the Most High says it's time.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that. You made me think about in Exodus when the Most High says that he was going to take them into the land. He said that he was going to drive out their enemies, but he said little by little I'm going to drive them out until you have increased to inherit the land. He didn't drive them out all at once. He took them on a process. He took them on a journey, because they would have been overwhelmed by what would have happened if he would have, if they would have had to deal with all of that at once. So the Most High deals with us that way in driving out the things that are enemy to his word. He drives things out little by little, and he walks us through that process and shows us those things. Like Sister Yarah was saying about just having to learn love. Sometimes it's our view of the Most High that we have to transform, because sometimes we've been nurtured in an environment that maybe have been hostile, whether it was a home environment or a religious environment where we don't even see the Most High as a loving Father. We don't see the Most High as how he is, and that'll cause our relationship with him in the way that we think that he's dealing with us to be in a harsh way. I know that was a struggle for me in coming from a background when you haven't had a father and you're trying to understand what it is to have a father. That's been part of my journey of being able to embrace the Most High as a father and really seeing him as a father. So it's this personal journey that he takes us on based on where we are, based on him knowing our environments that we've been nurtured in. And it really comes down to us allowing that process to happen, allowing him to kind of navigate us through that. But I think that half the battle is being able to recognize that, because a lot of times a few people have given a testimony of kind of coming in kind of gung-ho, kind of coming in, thinking that knowledge equals that the power of this walk is knowledge, and because we know things that equals favor with the Most High, or that is with the equipment that we've needed, but as we've gone through this, started going through this walk, we realized, okay, it's not in the knowledge, it's in the walk, it's in the wisdom, gaining the wisdom and understanding of how to walk in that knowledge and really getting an understanding of who the Most High is. We don't even realize how when I was taking college classes some years ago, I remember I was taking a African American studies class or African American psychology or something, and the professor was talking about Eastern culture versus Western culture, right? So they were talking about how in the East, there's more of a focus on the whole. It's more of a focus on community. You know, things are dealt with the whole. It's more communal. Where in the West, we're kind of nurtured into an individualistic type of mindset. You know, in the West, the mindset is me. You know, my, you know, career, my this, my that, and it's separate from the whole. You know, so everything that we do, you know, okay, the child grows up. When you're 18, you get out the house. You go away to college. You go, you know, everybody is separate and individualistic. And that's just the way that our culture has how we've been nurtured in this culture to think, unless our individual family has taught us differently. You know, and that kind of enlightened me on how you're nurtured will affect the whole direction of your life and how you approach everything in your life. And I immediately recognized, I was like, well, the Torah is teaching us, the Most High is teaching us how to consider the whole versus just thinking about us. Even though we have this walk with him that's a personal walk, he's always directing us towards the good of his whole, because the whole equals his house, right? So he wants his whole house to function, you know, he wants his whole house to function, you know, to be good, to be well. And so he's looking at the whole thing. And anybody who is a parent, you know, you're sitting back and you know that you're not looking at what's good for one individual child of mine. You're looking at what's good for this family, you know, and you don't want to sacrifice the whole for just what's good for one, you know, and you teach your children in that way, you know. So the Most High is trying to bring us back to that thing where we are considering the whole. We're considering how do these things affect everyone other than just, you know, myself. And that was also a shift for me, because, you know, coming into this walk, it kind of shifted me into that space of thinking more about the whole. How does this affect everything? And I started seeing that more in his word, in his Torah, that he's always concerned about the whole. Some of the things he may tell us to do, or some of the instructions, we might wonder, like, well, what difference does it make? Or if I don't do this, what difference does it make? You know, it doesn't make me that much difference. But when you look at it in a big scale, it'll make a difference to how it affects the whole, you know, the entirety. So, so that is a shift, you know. So being a people who are, you know, 2,000 years removed from Israel, who have you know been in. So at the time of Messiah, which is about 2,000 years ago, about, you know, 4,000 years into the game altogether, our people had already been so far removed from the ways of the Most High. So as Aki was saying in the beginning, like when we get to the scribes and the Pharisees, what they're doing is a far cry from what the Most High intended. You know, so as we look at how far removed we are from the heart of the Most High, from the ways of the Most High, and then, you know, as a people 2,000 years ago, even the people in the land, the Messiah had to bring them back. He had to reteach them. He had to try to put a fresh picture, a fresh revelation of the heart of the Most High and try to show them the Most High. So 2,000 years later, us as a people who have been, we at least started in a culture, Eastern culture before it was influenced by the West, we at least had certain values or certain things. So now we've been through that. We've been scattered. We've gone through slavery, which created its own culture, right? Our ancestors have gone through that, which created a culture that you know, has broken us as a people in certain ways. Coming out of that, we've in an American culture that is broken. It's just a broken culture that's contrary to the ways of the Most High, you know. And then we've developed a culture of coping with everything that we're dealing with. You know, certain things that we do to cope, certain things that we've used as defense mechanisms to be able to counter the culture. You know, we came up with hip hop culture to counter the culture that we were dealing with. You know, so we have all of these things that are the traditions of man at the end of the day. So all of these things that at the end of the day equate to being traditions of man, ideas of man, that reflects the woundedness of man. You know, all of these things, and we've been molded by this. You know, going back to Romans 12, we've been conformed by these things. So as we're coming to the Most High, that these are all the things that we got to now check, allow the Most High to shift and sift through. You know, allow the Most High to challenge us on. So when I was talking about earlier about, okay, so do you throw the baby? Do you throw everything away, or do you you know, how do you approach this process? You know, the Most High is going to take you through the way that he takes you through. But something that we just all have to be cognizant of is there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot in this below the surface. There's a whole lot under the surface. There's a whole lot of things that are entangled in the way that we think, in the way that we operate, that the Most High is going to start to untangle. You know, but we have to know that. We have to know and be in a state of humility for him to show it to us. We can't be clinging on to stuff, you know, and that's the only thing that's going to be our enemy, is if we cling on to things when we've been challenged. You know what I mean? If we allow that defense mechanism to kick in, you know. So where is it going to show up? It's going to show up in relationships mostly. You know, you're going to be challenged by your significant other. You know, you're going to be challenged by another brother or sister. You know, you're going to be challenged relationally, and it's going to put a mirror up to kind of reflect back on something on you. And then the challenge is to not operate out of a defense mechanism or a coping mechanism, so that the Most High so you can keep that area open, you know what I mean? So that the Most High can deal with it. You know, when you look at how we wear a Band-Aid with something. I talked about a wound. When the Most High is trying to cleanse us, we got a wound sometimes. You got to, you know, if I have a fresh cut or something, I might put a Band-Aid on it so that I can take a shower and not get bothered or, you know, infected or anything. But it can't heal with the Band-Aid on it. You got to take that Band-Aid off and allow air to get to it so that it can heal. You know, so certain things are sensitive to us, so we may not be ready, you know what I mean, to deal with certain things, but we have to be conscious that there's a lot below the surface that the Most High wants to get to, you know. And I think that if we keep that mindset, you know, it'll serve us well. If we keep that mindset that I may not know everything, you know, it's something that I see, it's something that we all deal with, but even it becomes as we get older, you know, it's harder to let go of these things because there's a fear. You know, a lot of times we may see it with our elders. You may present them with truth, and it's kind of like they don't want to accept it. They don't want to receive it because it's a fear there, you know, and you're trying to snatch the Band-Aid off, you know, but it's a process of, you know, the Most High has to slowly remove it. But you have to be, we each have to be willing to allow that process to happen, you know. So that's the mind. When the scripture tells us to put on the mind of Yahusha, you know, we have to put on these certain mindsets, these certain ways of approaching things that allows the Most High in, you know, that creates that avenue that he can always come in and speak to us and take us through this healing process. And being patient with ourselves as we go through it. You know, some residue, some of the things that we have, some of the residue is stuck on there, you know, and has become a stronghold for us. You know, and we have to go through the process of allowing the Most High to bring us to break that stronghold. You know, and we'll go more into that. This is part one of you know, getting off the residue, washing off the residue, and we're going to go through the process of kind of digging deeper into what that looks like. But does anybody else have an example of how has your mindset changed? What was my question? How has your mindset changed? How has your thinking changed and your mindset changed since coming into the truth? What's an example of how it's changed? Or any other thoughts, any other thoughts from anything that we've talked about? Shalom, Sister Linda. Glad you made it on. And is there any area that you find, is there any area that you find to be a struggle, when it comes to seeing the residue? We all have areas where we can see clearly, but it's some things where it's kind of like I struggle with that area. There's lots of layers to residue. Some of us, our residue is our belief systems. Some of us, it's our personal preferences, our perspectives. Some of us is more emotional things. Some of us is maybe more mental things. Some of us are maybe more of our practices. But as we go through the process, the Most High he's gonna walk us through. He doesn't expect. So when you plant a seed, if I plant an apple seed, it's because I desire at some point to have an apple. When the Most High planted you into the earth as a seed, he knew what he wanted the end result to be. But he also understood that, when you plant a seed, you got to understand that it's going to be a long time before you get to the apple. It's going to be a minute before you get to the fruit. But that doesn't negate the whole rest of the process. You know what I mean? So just because you're working on roots right now does not negate the process. You know what I mean? So the Most High understands that it's a process to get to. I'm planting you as a seed in the dirt, in the earth. And one day I'm going to get this fruit that I'm looking for. And you have to be patient with yourself. We have to be patient with ourselves in that process and know that he's planted me in the earth, and I'm trying to get to this fruit that's going to be nourishing to the body, and that's going to have more seed in it to be able to continue, and to sow into the earth. But you got to get the root work done, and that's a process. But it's significant. You can't skip it, because a tree with no roots is no tree. You know what I mean? And the tree with roots is doing something with the soil. Like it's significant. When that tree starts to sprout out and you start to get the bark and the stump starts to grow up, it's significant. That portion is not to be negated. You know what I mean? So we're not starting our roots right now. We've been in our journey with the Most High prior to wherever we are right now. So we can't negate when we were, rooting in some area. We can't negate that building up process. We can't negate the branches. The tree is beautiful before it gets to the fruit. So we can't negate the branches and the leaves and the flowers that are growing. All of that is significant. All of that is a part of the process and is purposeful. So enjoy the process. See the beauty in each part of the process. And then it's going to get to the point where the fruit is just going to come forth. And it's going to come forth as long as we don't abort the process. As long as we don't start cutting stuff off, and resisting the pruning, and pulling up the roots before it's before it's time, and aborting the process. So, just enjoy the beauty of whatever area the Most High is working on, and know that just as sure as this seed is going to result in the fruit. You know what I mean? I'm starting to plant stuff or whatever, and it's a process. And I'm convinced that if we would have grown up doing gardening and stuff like that we would be a lot more patient. We would be a lot more understanding of how processes work. But being patient with the process and allowing the Most High to, and seeing the beauty in it, and not just the destination. Not just the destination that we're trying to get to, when allowing the process. Somebody had their Dr. Wood, you had your hand up?
Okay, sis, you just to make sure that you did say that, I can kind of go back to something you said earlier, right? Because I was looking at your picture on the culture aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to kind of touch on that if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you look at the top of that iceberg, right, you got the easy parts of the culture, like the main bolded parts of a lesson. Like when you're looking at a newspaper or something like that, you got the headlines. So you got the headlines, which were the the food, okay, so we understand the dietary law, okay, boom, like you said, the language, Hebrew, okay, so like when you look at the nation as a whole right now, we're only on the top portion, correct?
Right.
But that's because I think that some have a misconception of the Torah, right? So you wouldn't understand if you go to the other one on the iceberg. You wouldn't understand our concepts toward elders if you don't get deep into the Torah.
Right.
You would understand. You have laws like, okay, so when a gray-haired person comes into a room, you stand up. Everybody stands up. You show favor toward them. When it comes to parenting, you wouldn't understand the concept of parenting if you don't read the Torah as far as what the Most High is requiring of us. So, like when you look at the bottom of this iceberg, and you think of what the New Testament calls the laws of love. Like the laws of love are all in the Torah. So, like you said, I don't teach you a new commandment, but one that you've heard since the beginning.
Right.
And that's how you deal with the Creator. But the majority of it is how you deal with each other. And you wouldn't know how to deal with each other or how to love one another if you do not read the parts of the Torah that are not readily seen on the surface, which is the way you dress or the language that we speak or the festivals that we hold or so on and so forth. But if you get deeper into the Torah, then you understand the heart of the Creator.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's where it starts to make sense. You know what I mean? That's the tricky part, because it's like you can start doing things not understanding why you're doing it. You know what I mean? And then it's not coming from the heart. It's not coming from a place of understanding. You know, so you can have a whole room full of people, they're all doing, you know what I'm saying, the same things, but until you, like you said, understand the heart of the Creator, understand the heart of the Most High, then you're embodying it. You know what I mean? Then you're changing from the inside. You're not going to turn back. Just to give a basic example, when you look at something like fashion or clothing or whatever. So, you know, we have a cultural attire, a way that we dress culturally. You know what I mean? Not necessarily design. That's who the designs are culture or whatever, but the things that we do. Maybe we might cover our hair at different times, or we may we dress modest. You know what I mean? So you look at modesty. So if you look at something like modest attire, one of the things that switched for me when I was you know, in my walk in Christianity or whatever, I always still was somebody who dressed what I considered to be modest at that time. You know, and what most people would have considered to be modest. But when I came into this understanding, and as I started reading Torah and just kind of shifting my mind to certain things, my understanding of modesty shifted also. And it wasn't an outward thing. It had to do with the Torah of love. So in my prior mindset, it was, you know, I was in an environment where people, you know, it was kind of like you would dress in a way that was pretty modest, you know, considered modest. But if, let's say, the brothers did not think that it was modest, you know what I mean? A lot of times people would say, well, you know, that's their problem. They need to control their lust. They need to control their thoughts or whatever. That's on them, you know? So, well, that right there breaks the Torah, because the Torah in the heart of the Most High is to consider your brother, consider each other better than ourselves. You know what I mean? So certain things that were acceptable to me, and it would have been acceptable to most people, you know, once I encountered brothers who I heard saying differently, you know, once I, you know, was reading the Torah, certain things I made a change on based on that. So it wasn't about the outward act of let me dress a certain way or let me look a certain way, but it was a sense of I need to keep the Torah of loving my brother. I need to keep the Torah of loving people. I need to, the scripture tells me not to cast a stumbling block before, you know, my sister or my brother. You know what I mean? So that's part of the deep culture. You know what I mean? That's part of this part below the surface where it talks about the approach to, you know, to family, the concept of you know, courtesy and manners, that those deeper things, those heart issues. So as we learn the heart of the Father, then it impacts the things that are above the surface that people can see, you know, and it's not just an act of I'm putting on a costume or I'm putting on or I just like the way this looks, you know what I mean? So you may have a room full of people who may be dressed a certain way, but for different reasons, you know. So we have to be transformed in our thought process and the way that we approach things and the way that we approach people, and then that's going to influence the way that we do things, you know. So this above and below culture thing is not to negate either one, you know. And I go back to what Messiah says, that, you know, you should do one without neglecting the other, you know. So as we learn these weightier things, you know, it's as we learn the weightier things, then it'll influence these things that are everyday, you know, encounters. And as Aki was saying, the more that you learn Hebrew culture, the more that you learn the language, you'll realize how simple the Most High is. The Most High is not trying to, he's not complicated in what he's trying to teach us. Religious concepts and all these different things keep us debating back and forth, and it keeps us going in all these circles. But when you really learn the heart of the Most High, when you really learn the culture, it brings us back to a concrete understanding of basic things like the house, you know, like nature and growth. You know, it brings us right back to these basic things that we understand. And when we really grasp the beginning, when we go back to the garden, it becomes easier and easier to just discern between good and evil, discern between what's clean and unclean. And our eyes will become more easy to see, you know, and our hearts will become more softer to be able to discern, you know, to discern what we should do in any situation, you know. So it's going to get us there. We'll get ready to close out in a moment. Does anybody else have any comments? Shalom, brother Otha. Good to see you in. Sorry, we're getting ready to close out in a second. But does anybody else have any thoughts, any comments on anything?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I've been we're at about a month of learning the truth, knowing the truth, accepting the truth. I can definitely say at this point I'm on fire, insatiable.
Yeah.
Wanting to move faster than my spirit, my mind, and body can move.
Right.
But as this is happening, I notice that my surroundings are like going into chaos. It's like I want to be a monk and just shut it all off and go learn and then come back so I know how to handle it. And I feel not prepared, not like I'm learning and getting the tools, but I don't have them all yet. Like I don't know how to use them. So I don't know how to approach the things that are happening. And like you said, you'll see it in relationships. That's definitely where, you know, I'm seeing it. We're both, my spouse and myself, are on the same page as far as coming into the truth. But I think that everything before is still there. You know, it just doesn't magically, everything gets better and fixes. And you had talked about anger. Like I tend to have just a lot of anger from experiences, growing up, all of those types of things, disappointments. And now there's a joy with this process, but there's also an anger with this process to know that purposefully or not, we've been lied to, things are hidden from us. And there's so much, and the more I learn, it just makes me frustrated because I'm a 40-year-old woman, and where could I have been if I would have known this 20 years ago? You know, it's just hard to know that this greatness, this wonderfulness has always been there, and we've had to struggle, and we're still struggling. So, like, what do you say to those of us that are new in this walk, and like we want it all right now, but we can't have it all at this moment, you know? It's just, it's overwhelming and exciting, but also very frustrating.
Mm. Thank you for sharing, sis. I definitely understand. It is a wave of excitement. You're learning, you're grasping, and everything doesn't adjust to that in life. You know what I mean? Everything around you doesn't jump on board and go with you in that process. So it is a I think part of it is knowing that, you know what I mean? Like knowing that and embracing the fact that it's going to be a process. It is hard to when you think back, like, man, I wish I would have, if I could have just lived, all these years and raised my kids and did all these things according to this understanding. But that's what we think, you know what I mean? Because that's what we perceive, but the Most High had a time, he had a timing, he had a season for bringing you to where you are now, so it was that, like we talked about earlier, that rooting process where he needed you to have a different foundation. He needed you to have a foundation in however your upbringing has been to this point. He had to walk you through that to get you to this point. You know what I mean? So the thing about the Most High is, like, he knows the end from the beginning. So while we may look at the path and be like, well, why you ain't just take me? just like the Israelites was like, the road to the wilderness, the road to Israel, the promised land, was like a straight, they could have been there, but the Most High took them 40 years through the wilderness, you know what I mean, to be able to walk with them and prepare them and attempt to, right, the 40 years, right, to walk with them and to, teach them through that process, so, don't negate the walk that he's already brought you to over the last 40 years, really know that it was necessary, and give it the appreciation, that this is the season, like I said, that Most High knows the end from the beginning. So he saw when it would be the appropriate time, to bring you to this point now. So it's a point of just kind of, it's our flesh that gets so excited, you know what I mean? It's for good reason, but, just kind of pacing yourself and just knowing that it's going to be okay. You don't have to, you don't have to rush out of it. The Most High is going to take you, step by step. We can't get no faster. Because that's when it becomes we just accumulating knowledge, and it's like, okay, I don't have the capacity for this yet, right. I don't have, so what's more important is just getting the knowledge for where you are, getting the wisdom for where you are, and just taking it step by step. The most important thing is your relationships, so making sure, that's a blessing that you and your husband are on the same page, and, just nurturing that to grow together, and just feeding it, to the children as he shows you, just step by step, but it gets hard, to kind of hit your brakes. You get in the car and it's going fast. You're like, oh, you ready to roll, but you end up hitting the wall, so just got to pace yourself. Allow the Most High to deal with each area that he's showing you. Like you talked about the anger, allow him to deal, just to deal with those areas. Just to deal with those areas, and to appreciate it, not to go into the thing of, I could have, all these years, and go into that anger and go into that disappointment, because it is a difficult thing when you think about us and our people as a whole, and the journey that we've had to go through, but the Most High knows what he's doing. And he who begun a good work in you is going to see it through to completion, and the good work he began in you didn't begin just now, it began, throughout your upbringing, and he's been maneuvering you up to this point, so just hallelujah, praise the Most High, for that he's with you, and it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing, that you and your husband are on the same page, so just kind of allow it to unfold. Mm-hmm.
Also, if I might add, you were talking about avenues of power earlier, which I think was very important, because oftentimes we think that coming into this truth, like you said, that the more knowledge we get, the faster that we're able to, quickly spout out the information that we have. We think that's power because we know that knowledge is power. Yes, it is. As the Most High says, get wisdom, get knowledge. Above all things, get an understanding. Understanding comes with experience. And coming from a place of anger myself, and the Lord dealing with me in such a way, it's very good to understand the avenues of power that He has given us. One of those avenues of power is in temperance. I think temperance is one of the main characteristics of the Lord that He really wants us to focus on and maintain. You get temperance through making sure that you eat properly, making sure that you're drinking enough water, making sure that you're getting enough sleep, not going to bed angry. Simple things, making sure that you get outside every day, enjoy the sun, enjoy the simple things in life, like Yarah just saying, just the simple things is what helps us a lot to deal with these things. Another thing I really like to do is I like to try to see, the greatness of the Lord, which helps us to understand His infinite, His awe-inspiring, His awesomeness, His great majesty, in that He's always watching us. You know what I'm saying? And as we understand that the angels are always writing, that the Lord is always watching us, He's always with us, there's nothing we can do to hide from Him. It kind of sets us in a place where, we understand that we're always in the presence of the King. Prayer is another thing that helps me a lot. And it helped me a lot in the beginning. Because I was very, very angry. And the more I prayed, the more the Lord helped me to deal with those situations in my life, to kind of get control of myself, to hate when I would explode, to seek Him when I would do so. We have to seek the Lord in all things. The scripture says, in all our ways, acknowledge Him. And that's something that I'm really wanting right now. I'm trying to hone in on right this second, really acknowledging God in every single thing I do, in every single thing I think, in every single thing I say, in my decisions that I make, even in thoughts and things to that sort, and repenting. Having a repenting heart. That's what the Lord loved about David. That's why he had a heart after the Lord. He had a repentant heart, and he constantly was repenting to the Lord, because we have to remember that the things that we do in this life, we never do them to other people. We always only do all things to God. The scripture says, when I sin, Lord, I have sinned unto you, is what David said. I have done these things to you. You see what I'm saying? And so in my understanding of that, if I wrong someone, you see it's a thing of discernment, is also another power that the Lord gives us, that sense of discernment. We are able, in the things that we say, to see the countenance of the person that we're speaking with change. So paying much attention, as the Lord pays attention to us, simple things God will help us with. I'll give just a simple little prayer like, Lord, I want my hair to be, thick, God, that's a simple thing. What in the world? Thick hair? What? But the Lord, he pays such good attention to me, and He will make my hair thicker. And that's a simple thing, but the Lord, He is so intricate in how He deals with us. He wants us to deal with ourselves and with one another in the same way. And when we start to really understand those things, that comes from, like Yarah was saying, building a very strong relationship with the Lord. And you do so by praying, by your time spent in the Word. We eat that daily bread. It keeps us from the daily temptations, and just having great faith is great power, understanding that the Lord is, and that He is a rewarder of those that diligently seek Him. So the more we seek His face every day, the more power he gives us, to control ourselves and ask for that. I ask for power all the time. Lord, I need more of your power in this area. I need more of your power in this area. God, I need more of your wisdom in this area. Lord, I wish I had dealt with this situation differently. God, can you let your Holy Spirit, give me more of that Holy Spirit, give me more of your power. Help me to pray better. Show me the things that I need to be praying for when I pray, God. And he'll do those things for us. He's done it for me. He'll do it for us all.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, sis. I was going to read. This is a verse that we, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna get to you, Toya. I see your hand up. A simple scripture that we all know, but when you look at it in light of it, says the fruit of the Spirit is love, is joy, is peace, is patience, is kindness, is goodness, is trustworthiness, is gentleness, is self-control. Against such there is no Torah. And those who are of the Messiah have impelled the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. So just looking at as we're going through the things that come up that are contrary to that peace, that patience, that love, that joy, the things that are keeping us. So if we're going into areas of this walk and it's causing us to come out of that place, then it's something that's trying to empower our flesh versus the Ruach the Spirit trying to move us ahead. You know what I mean? So that's something that could be a good gauge to see, if the direction I'm going to is causing me to no longer be in a place of kindness, is allowing me to no longer have joy. If I'm losing my peace, if I'm no longer able to control some area of myself, then okay, it's for us to examine, okay, what is going on? You know what I mean? Is the most high moving me, or am I just kind of getting ahead? So just kind of going back to that gauge to be able to see, okay, how am I still walking by the Ruach leading me, the Spirit leading me step by step, or am I getting ahead of the Spirit, or am I lagging behind the Spirit? When the Spirit wants to bring me into this place to cleanse some kind of area in my heart, So being in step with the Ruach and just kind of testing it out to see what kind of fruit we're experiencing. Toy, you had your hand up?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I'm looking at the demonstration or illustration of the surface culture and the deep culture, and I wanted to say, especially during this quarantine, I basically gone underwater, so away from the surface culture. Spending so many years there, at this point, I'm sensing a cross between feeling some type of way and being annoyed. So I don't feel bad or punishing myself, but being in the quarantine has made me reflect more and to see how my interest is going further and further away from the surface. So I'm seeing progression like that. And it's interesting that it had to take something like a quarantine to, once you had to distance yourself, the churches had to close. And so you got pulled away from the festivities and the music and all that stuff. And it's like I find myself focusing more on the Most High. And I'm like, wow, was I really that into the surface? Sometimes we don't realize it until we're taken away from it.
That's good. That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah, so it just makes me want to go all the way to the bottom.
Yeah.
Looking at it, it's like, I don't want to say I wasn't in the deep culture. My interest has always been there, but I want to explore or experience all of the deep culture. Because this surface culture is too light. It's just, I don't feel fulfilled, or I feel like I'm not really putting my all into it.
Yeah. And I think that's the goal. I think I think that's what the Most High kind of wanted us to see during this time of quarantine. I think that was part of the his plan, you know, part of his intentions, because you do get distracted by kind of the surface level things and the outward things, and we do kind of we just keep going, you know, we'll keep going in that circle, just kind of mindlessly, just kind of like just flowing, you know. And it takes for us to be something like a quarantine to really get us to kind of reflect and look within to see, you know, examine our ways to see how, you know, what am I really doing, you know, what am I really, you know, what's really going on, you know. So I think that's awesome that, you know, that has done that for you in this time, you know, that it's not just, you know, because some have just continued as if it's not a quarantine and haven't taken that time to kind of go under the surface. So I think that's awesome. I think that's what the Most High kind of desired for his chosen ones during this time, to kind of take inventory of what is it that I'm focused on, you know, where is my attention line, you know, and to examine, you know, because it took those things away. It's kind of just took it and moved it all out the way, and it just kind of caused us to reflect, you know. So I think that's awesome that you've been able to get that during this time.
And I'm a choir member and a praise team member. So by that being away, it's like, wow, was that one of my main things I enjoyed about the service, singing in the choir? I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah, sometimes when you strip it all away, you realize what was really there, you know, what was really purposeful, what it really was, you know. And sometimes that's what it takes, and the Most High will orchestrate it. He will orchestrate the circumstances to be able to, you know, strip those things away, you know, so that we can look to see what's left. If I take away all these things, is there anything left? You know, is there any substance left? So yes, I think that's awesome. You know, keep diving. Brother Otha.
Shalom, family.
Shalom.
Miss Rakah. Man, it's a wonderful discussion, you know, wonderful for the family to get together in Yahusha.
Yes.
I was listening, and, you know, sometimes we want it all right now. But each one of us, we're waking up around this time over the, you know, maybe last few years or so, and some of us a little bit longer. It's for a reason. It's for
you froze up, brother Otha. If you're talking, hold on for a moment. Your screen is frozen.
Is this better?
All right. Yep. You're back.
Shalom.
You're back.
We're back. All right. We got interference, you know, but we're going to keep on moving, right? Keep on moving. So as is written in our Torah, the things written aforetime, beforehand, was written for our learning, all right? Sometimes we want everything right now, but we have to understand this right here and take it in, because it's a blessing for us to have gone through what we went through. Because remember the blessing that Moses gave us? Am I frozen, y'all? Y'all still with me?
You're good.
Moses said, Yehuda is as a lion's whelp, all right? So we was young lions, all right? And we were prey by everything around us, all right? But he says, the scepter is not going to leave from us, nor a lawgiver from between our feet. So we've learned what righteousness is based on the fall, all right? And, okay, hold on, I got to tone it down. because you see, in the book of Daniel, we know we've been taught lies. The times has changed, the feast days has changed. Now here's we getting back to what Moses said. He said the scepter not going to never leave from Yehuda. Now we know Yahuah say the last going to be first and the first going to be last. We're going to go from the tail back to the head. Now, the way that happens is we practice what he's given us, these holy days, these dietary laws, the Sabbath, because this is worship to our true Elohim with no leaven. So he says, as an old lion, who gonna rouse them up? We've been through it all. We done seen the curses, we done seen the blessings, and now we be thinking ourselves in the land of our captivity. All right. So now we that old lion, we've been roused up. It's a ruach within us is is roused up. So we got a great wisdom through all our tribulation. So we may want it all right now, but let's savor what all we went through to become that old lion that has the wisdom to teach the cubs. So now we see through the deception, and we can help them through the deception, so we can be a nation again, worshiping Yahuah in the name of Yahusha as a mishpachah, as a nation. And maybe we'll start seeing those blessings as a nation. All glory and esteem to Yahuah in the name of Yahusha.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. That was
Hallelujah.
good. That was good. Thank you for sharing that.
All praise to the Most High Yah.
Hallelujah. While you were talking, I could see, I just saw like a vision of people, of things falling into order. You know what I mean? Sometimes the outer structure, when you put things, the outer structure back in its place, it causes everything to shift back into alignment. You know, so as we're like doing the simple things of keeping the Shabbat, keeping the feast days, you know, doing it, that is causing, even though those may seem like little things, but they're causing things to fall back in order. Because when you clean up, when you start keeping the dietary laws, well, guess that's going to show you. You stop eating unclean meat. What does that show you? It points to the rest of your diet, right? So it starts to point to that. So then you start to realize, more than this cookie is unclean. This other thing, all these other things are unclean. So now you're starting to clean up your temple, and then your body's getting into order. And when your body gets into order, what happens? You get to start thinking clearer. Your emotions start to get more balanced. You know what I'm saying? Your hormone levels in your body start to balance out. So now you're becoming you're a person that the Most High is able to put into order. As your calendars get into order, the Shabbat and the feast days, you're falling into a system. You're falling into alignment. So where your thoughts and your calendar, things are falling into a system of order. You know what I mean? So even as we're doing these simple things, it may seem like, okay, we're just doing this, but it's putting us in alignment, in order. It's kind of like when you have children, if you ever taught in a classroom, like you understand how important it is to have structure. Like if you don't have no structure, kids are chaotic. You know, and even though children seem like they want to do whatever they want to do, they actually desire order. They're looking for, okay, we come in, we do this, and then they're looking for order. And if there's no order or structure, it's chaos. You know what I mean? So we being the children of Yisrael, the children of the Most High, as he's putting those outer structures back in order, is causing us inwardly to come into alignment as well. You know, our weekly, as we keep the Shabbat, we realize we start to look at our week, and it starts to show us and reveal some things to us. So even though these may seem like it may be those things that look like it's above the surface, but sometimes you got to put structure in as a starting point. You got to put the skeleton in place so that you can start to put the flesh on. Those dry bones, you got to put the dry bones together. They're dry, but then you start to put this everything else starts to put onto it. Then you could blow the spirit into it. But what if you blow the spirit into no structure? You know what I'm saying? You just got, you know what I'm saying? There's no bones there, but you breathe the spirit into it. What are you going to do? So he had to put the bones together. So we can't despise the dry bones because they're dry. They're dry right now, but it's putting the structure in order so that I can blow my ruach into it, and it's going to fill out everything else. You know what I mean? So it's a process. But while you were talking, I started seeing the elements kind of fall into place, you know, and that's what he's doing with us. He does the work from the inside out and from the outside in. Like, Yah is just awesome. He's awesome. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All right, I'm not gonna hold y'all hostage. It's 9 o'clock. Anybody else have anything that they wanted to share? All right, that was awesome. I appreciate everybody's input, everybody's sharing, everybody's thoughts. I think we got an awesome bunch of people here. I appreciate this time, and it adds so much value. We each have a part that we contribute that is valuable, and just being able to respect the spirit of the Most High and how he's working in each one of us, I think is awesome. So I appreciate everybody coming on. The link will be, this video will be in the group, should be by tonight, and the other one will be up on YouTube by tomorrow. And I'm gonna pray out, and then I will see you all in the group. Prayerfully, I'm trying to get to doing more stuff in the group. Y'all pray for me. All right, I'm 1 second. Okay. Let's see. All right. So I'm gonna pray us out. Since you said the mic is bad, can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Hallelujah. Father YarahBatYah, we thank you. Thank you for this time. We thank you for your word. We thank you for your spirit. We thank you for your son. We thank you for your patience with us, Father, and walking with us and enduring with us, Father, through this walk, Father. Help us to be patient with ourselves, to be patient with you, to be patient with each other as we're trying to come back together as one, Father, as we're trying to come back to your ways, as we're turning back to your ancient path, to your eternal truth, Father, as we're coming back to this way, Father. So allow us to be settled in our spirit, Father. Allow us to be settled and to take each day, Father. You said you give us each day our daily bread, Father. So allow us to seek you for our daily bread, Father, to allow that to nourish us in each day, and to not desire more, and to not accept less, but to accept what you've given us for each day, Father, to get through that day, Father. Transform our minds, Father, so that we could even see time the way that you see time, and not the way that we've been used to seeing time and seeing our life and timelines, Father, but to just settle and sit in this moment with you. I pray for each person that was on this call tonight, Father. You know where their hearts are, their desires, Father, where their needs are, Father. I pray that you would be with their households. Be with their households, Father, as they're going through this journey, and allow them to just go step by step by step with you, Father. I thank you that you would protect them, Father, that you would protect their households from the works of the enemy, Father, that you would continue to shine your light on the works of the adversary that may come against them, Father. Allow them to see it, Father, so that they don't fall into those holes, Father. I thank you that you continue to illuminate yourself, Father. Show us who you are. Show us your goodness, Father. Show us your esteem, your glory, Father. Show us who you are, so that outshines everything else, Father. And allow us to continue to stay in a humble place where we can see the areas of our hearts that you desire to move in, Father, to continue to conform us into your image. Father, I thank you. I give you praise, Father. I give you honor and glory, Father, for all that you've done, all that you are. It's in the name of your son, Yahusha HaMashiach, we pray. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah. And everyone have a blessed night. And I will see you online. See you next week. Shalom.
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 Shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
So, can you hear me?
Yep, shalom.
Yes, that's my mic. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Shalom, sis. Glad you made it.
Shalom, shalom.
Thank you.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, no. Shalom, Aki. Glad you made it.
Thank you.
Me too.
All right.